You voted for Trump.
Yes, I did.
What are the few black people in America?
Uh,
No, that's not true.
Man, there are a lot of. I think I'm one of the few black people willing to say it out loud.
Willing to admit it?
Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of black people, a lot of black men.
They just won't admit it.
Nah, because we're at a state right now in this country where you can't separate certain things. It's you're either 100% this way or 100% that way, right? It made absolutely no fundamental sense for me to vote for anyone but Trump, considering who I am and what I do.
You could just vote for nobody.
What kind of precedent does that set? I'm an advocate for a constitutional right. How does that look, me saying?
Well, sometimes you just don't have a candidate that you want representing your country, period.
Yeah.
None of the above.
That's fine, but it's gonna go one way or the other.
There's also independents and stuff like that.
So I was gonna vote for Gary Johnson. So
Okay.
Gary Johnson didn't kind of showed himself out to be a little bit of a kook. So from that perspective, I got two options. I had Trump and I had Hillary.
Right.
Right. So we had potentially two Supreme Court seats up, right? That's going to come throughout that 4-year period. And understanding that the court at the time was literally divided down the middle. So whoever was going to be replaced, that's the side on the issue that is incredibly important to me that it was going to fall on. And that would put the court in a position of extreme power to change the fundamental understanding of what the Second Amendment was. I know what Hillary Clinton's stance on firearms are.
Which is?
She's vehemently against firearms.
Okay.
Right? So from that perspective, I look at it and I say, all right, so we have the Supreme Court, and within the 4-year period of that cycle, you get to replace 2 of those seats on an issue that's incredibly important to me. I'm not risking it on Hillary. I'm not even a fan of Hillary.
So you voted based on gun rights?
More or less, yes.
More or less. Okay.
Yeah. And then also there's a tax component to that too.
There is.
Right? And she blatantly said she wanted to increase the corporate tax. I own a corporation. I don't want to pay more in taxes.
Yeah. But Trump wants to get rid of Obamacare, which I think was one of the greatest things done in the US.
Again, it depends who you talk to. Obamacare to me was a non-starter. The reason it was a non-starter for me is because I have insurance, right?
You have insurance, but the pre-existing condition thing and the fact that you have so many people in this country who do not have health insurance.
No, but that's the point.
It's catastrophic.
This is the point I'm getting at, though. I didn't say I have insurance, so I'm not concerned about it. What I'm saying is there's so many different varying perspectives. There are some people who were just on that cusp, right? And Obamacare messed them up. They were able to afford health care, and now they can't to the degree that they needed to. Then you have the people on the other side of that who, without health care, without Obamacare, they were screwed. Right?
Yeah.
And I have friends on both sides of those perspectives. And I also had situations where people who were now being forced to pay for health care that they could barely afford.
Yeah, but what's more important than your health? Like, how many people just didn't have health care because they felt like it wasn't that important, and then next thing you know, they're just dead.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
I don't disagree with you on that.
The fact that you have a country like America where everyone does not have health care is to me just ridiculous. And the whole pre-existing condition thing is just stupid as well. To the point of you go and get cancer, you don't have health insurance, you go to get treatment, they say, well, sorry, you should have had, the fact that you didn't have health insurance before you got cancer means that we're not going to actually cover this cancer or this life or HIV or whatever else.
But that's the point that I'm getting at is that I think a lot of people like to make this argument based on the fact that it's clear cut because it isn't.
I mean, nothing is clear cut when it comes to politics.
Exactly.
I understand that. Yeah. I understand that. You said something really interesting in the Killer Mike interview where you said that blacks are expected to be on the side of Democrats historically, and the Democrats are anti-gun. So they sort of get thrown into this anti-gun bucket unknowingly. Yeah. Is that pretty much what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's that. That's the vast majority of it. The other part for me is a lot of my people who end up on the side of, because to be honest, majority of most black people socially are pretty conservative. They're pretty damn conservative.
Okay.
But they tend to vote Democratic.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about that is, and that a lot of that too is predicated on the fact that they just feel Republicans are racist. So they don't want to be associated with that party. The problem is that with the Democrats, they like to use language that makes it seem like they're pushing policies that are advantageous to the community. And so they'll say things like, we need to get the guns off the street, so we need to have universal background checks and all of these other policies that don't necessarily do anything but make it harder on the actual community. Because I always ask them all the time. I'm like, you're standing up there and you're aligning yourself with the party that's pushing these laws. Where do you think they're going to come and enforce them? They're not going to do it in the suburbs. They're going to come to the exact communities that they've been going to enforce these laws. That ends up throwing more of our men in jail. That ends up creating an even worse situation.
Well, you've had situations with cops.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the worst thing that's happened?
So me and a group of my friends in high school, we were driving to, we were looking for a place to hoop, right? And we were, when you're young, you're hooping, you're always looking for the next competition, right? And so we were driving around and we were in an area that we weren't familiar with. And I remember we were kind of lost. So we were in this like shitty station wagon and we pull up next to a cop car. There's a cop car and there's a black SUV. And then we pull up next to this cop car to see if we can ask the cop for directions. The beauty of naivete. And so we pull up next to the cop. We don't see the cop in the car. And so we back out. And as soon as we back out to leave, the cop jumps out of the back of the van with his gun drawn. And I'm talking like just angry. I'm talking livid. And then he's like, put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up, while telling us to turn the car off. And it's like, so I'm in the passenger seat, my friend's in the driver's seat, and then I have my friend in the back. There's actually 3 of us, not 4. And so he started off on my side. So he comes up on my side, he has the gun, and I'm literally thinking he's so angry, I think he's gonna accidentally shoot me. Mm. So he comes up, puts the gun to the window on my side, then circles around the front of the hood. He's like, turn the car off, no, he tells my friend, roll the window down, keep your hands up. So friend's like, I don't know what to do because I don't want to move my hands, right? And so he's like, roll the window down. So my friend rolls the windows down. He literally puts the gun and presses it to my temple of my friend's head.
Wow.
And so I'm looking like, what the fuck? And my friend's in the back just like, what the fuck? Like, it's just nuts. And he's yelling and screaming. I'm like, what is this dude's deal? And my friend's like, I remember my friend's, his eyes were literally closed. Like I could literally see it. He's like, I'm done. And finally, I don't know what happened. He just calmed down. And I guess he realized, he was overreacting. And we were like, dude, we're lost. Like, we were just looking to see if we can ask for directions. And he was like, get out of here. And so.
There you go.
And the alternative to be fair, I remember I was driving to one of my legal mentors. He has a ranch in halfway point between Houston and Dallas. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was driving, I had like 4 rifles and like 5 handguns because, we were going to do some hunting, shooting, just kind of hanging out. I remember I get pulled over. A cop gets out, big, burly, country-bred white dude, bald head. I'm like, this is not going to go good. I'm like, this is going to be bad. So he asked me to get out of the car. I get out of the car, and then he's like, where you headed? He's like, you have any guns in the car? I'm like, yeah, I got like 4 rifles, 4 or 5 pistols. He's like, where you headed? And I was like, so this ranch or whatever. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, what you gonna be doing? I was like, we're just gonna hunt, do some shooting, hanging out, chill. Ended up talking to dude on the side of the road for 30 minutes about guns. So it's you know what I mean? So there's always that. And that's why I've approached a lot of these shootings, these police shootings, the way that I have. I have to approach them from an individualistic standpoint because I've had bad cops. I've had really good ones.
Right. Well, I mean, I was talking to Delia Hughley recently, mm-hmm. and the argument is, with the cops that end up shooting people unnecessarily, it's like, well, there's just a bad apple, but you can't have a bad apple who flies a plane. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. Like, that's not tolerated. Oh yeah, he just crashed one plane. 200 people died, but that's just, you don't hear about this.
Yeah, you do. Dude in German did just not too long ago. He crashed the damn plane because he was suicidal. Yeah. So it happens.
A lot less people crash planes than
absolutely
than cops who shoot people.
There are also way more stops, interactions between civilians and cops than there are flights.
Okay, fair enough. There was a documentary I saw a while ago, and At one point, they had introduced fingerprint sensors on guns,
Yeah.
and a gun store that tried to carry that almost got shut down by people just boycotting them and so forth. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know, okay.
Yeah, so remember, the devil's always in the details.
Okay.
Right? No one in the gun community is against fingerprint guns.
I love the idea.
I don't have a problem with people coming out. Use all the technology in the world you want to improve guns.
Think about how many kids are going to not shoot themselves playing with their parents' guns if there's a fingerprint sensor.
You want to know why they were angry, though?
Why?
We don't want it to be mandated.
Why?
Because I'm not going to relegate my safety. Like, I don't have any kids. So why am I going to be forced to have a gun that, one, has not been tried and tested, right? This is a tool that you use to save your life, right? And if you're in the gun world the way that I am, I've shot enough guns and I've shot so much, I know the failure rates of guns. Even from the point where we are now, we're at the most technologically advanced time of gun ownership that we've ever been.
Guns still jam.
Right? Absolutely. And at the worst times. So from that perspective, cool. You want to come out with guns that have fingerprint sensors on them? By all means, have at it. What you're not going to do is tell me that I can only buy those guns. That's it. That's the only gripe whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I could see both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
And you've actually spoken about the whole school shooting situation and so
Quite a bit.
forth quite a bit. And you actually disagree with some of the stances that the survivors have had.
In terms of which one specific?
There's been a bunch of them. I guess Parkland is the most recent one.
No, not the most recent one, but the biggest one. The biggest
one.
most recent one. Yeah.
The biggest most.
Because we just had the one most recent one was, I think, guy used actually like a shotgun and like a revolver or something.
Right.
As far as like body count, unfortunately, Parkland. Yeah.
Parkland. And what have you said about Parkland?
So, I've got a lot of shit for videos that I've done in respect to Parkland and addressing the kids. And one thing I understood was, I looked at it from this perspective. These kids just went through an incredibly traumatic experience, right? And I've never been one to approach the issue of firearms from an emotional standpoint.
Okay.
Because nothing good comes from the inherent irrationality in emotion.
Yeah.
I'm not saying be completely and utterly void of it, but that's not what I'm leading with. A lot of these kids don't know anything about the issue. This is their first entrance into the issue. I don't have a problem with them speaking on it. They can speak on it all day long. That's the country we live in. However, my thing was, one, the fact that you're trying to silence people who disagree with you on the issue shows the level of how juvenile you are on the issue.
Right. I think you've said that you don't like people using their First Amendment to try to stifle the Second Amendment. Yeah. Right.
That's not how this works.
Yeah.
And also, simply because I critique your idea on the issue doesn't mean I'm attacking you. It just means we have a difference of opinion on the idea. But we live in a space and time now where, well, I'm not gonna say we live in a space and time, but optically, me challenging kids who just went through a traumatic experience makes me look like a monster.
Right.
And go ahead.
Well, you've said that you think the teachers should have guns.
I think, and every time, so I was just on Bill Maher, right? And he asked me the question, and I let off with, I think we should arm teachers. And instantly people think, okay, Oprah walks into every school in America and just starts handing guns to all the teachers. That's not what I meant. What I meant was, if we're gonna set up a system in which a teacher has to undergo a certain level of training, pay for it, right? If they wanna go through all of that to be able to carry a gun within the school, then I think we should allow them to do that. I'm not saying you should be forcing teachers to carry firearms. I'm saying if you want to set up a program and a system, at least I think we should entertain setting up a program and a system, which would require these teachers to go through a certain level of training where we feel comfortable enough with the fact that they be carrying a gun in the school, which would be no different than an armed guard.
Well, I'll be honest. I own guns. Well, I own guns in New York. When I was living there, I owned guns in, California. Now that I live here most of the time. The amount of training I got to get these guns was almost non-existent.
Okay.
Like literally, at the time that I was able to buy a whole bunch of guns. I knew very little about shooting, loading,
So let me ask you this question.
I think that's just an inherent problem. I think people should have way more training before handing something as crazy as a gun.
So why are we dealing with the gun issue the way that we're dealing with it? If we understand we have almost 400 million guns in this country, right? The guns aren't going anywhere. People are still buying guns. Why aren't we taking then the energy involved in trying to pass anti-gun legislation that won't do anything or save anyone's life, but then turn around and take that energy and focus it on teaching and training people?
I agree.
That would save way more lives.
I think it should be like a driver's license. You know what I mean?
I don't, but
I mean, someone who doesn't know how to drive a car at all cannot go and watch a 30-minute video and then be handed a driver's license.
But you can.
Which is essentially what happened when I was able to buy a gun.
You were able to buy a gun.
Multiple guns.
Were you able to carry it?
No.
You weren't. I can buy as many cars as I want without a license.
Okay.
I just can't drive it on public roads without one.
So you're telling me that in places like Texas where you have carry permits, there's a lot more training involved?
What do you mean in terms of, like, you still have to undergo training in order to carry that gun. So there's a test that you have to pass in order for you to carry that gun before you can get licensed. Yeah.
Okay, so there is more training involved.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know.
No. To buy a gun, there's virtually no mandated level of training, which I'm fine with. I don't think there should be a mandate for training.
I think there should.
Here's why I don't.
Because just because you can't legally take it outside your house doesn't mean that people don't do that every day.
Yeah, but then what it stems to do
that's like saying giving someone a car and saying, but you can't drive it.
But
you think no one's going to drive it?
But it disproportionately affects the people who probably need it the most. Because what will end up happening is you'll start having a training requirement to own a firearm. So let's say you have a certain number of hours, then you have certain fees that you have to pay. Me, single, no kids, cool. What about my mom when she was raising me? She was working 2 jobs. She had to work late, right? So where's she gonna get the time to undergo the training?
I mean, training's not gonna be $10,000.
You don't know that though. That's the thing. But here's the thing that I'm getting at. I implore anybody who has a gun and doesn't undergo training is irresponsible as shit.
Right.
That's my stance. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
You should have the gun and undergo as much training as you possibly could. However, what I'm not a fan of is the government saying before you can own a gun, you have to undergo training.
We could agree to disagree on that.
Well, from a philosophy standpoint, the reason why I say that is because there's an inherent level of simplicity in using a gun to defend yourself, which is why it's the main go-to when it comes to self-defense. Guns are relatively easy to use to defend yourself.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, the bar of entry is rather low in that regard. Now, when we start talking about the dynamics of taking a gun and carrying it outside of your home, that's a little different.
I've interviewed probably half a dozen rappers that have gotten accidentally shot by their friends.
Okay, but which goes to my point. If we spent so much time, but remember, like you just said, you started this conversation. We talked about that there's an illegal gun culture within that industry. However, if we spent more time focusing on talking about the safety and responsible use of firearm ownership, that's knowledge. Like, in order to avoid something like that happening, there are literally 4 rules. 4. You don't break 2 of them at the same time, nothing bad ever happens. I didn't learn that until 2 years, about 6 months into my gun journey, right? And so it's like, what the hell? Like, everyone should know this. Those 4 simple rules alone, no problems.
What happened between you and Russell Simmons?
So that was literally, I was in Virginia, and it was like, I want to say it was the weekend I just started doing what I was doing with the NRA. I kind of came out with a series of videos talking about gun rights issues. And I remember I was at a bar in Virginia. I was actually kind of drunk. And I remember I was on my phone. It's like when Twitter was really starting to kick off. And I was looking at my phone, I get a tweet. I see a tweet. Like, I guess NRA had tweeted out, like clips of my videos or something. And Russell Simmons tweets me. He's like, how can you as a young black man argue on behalf of an organization like the NRA for gun rights? And so I responded simply. I was like, I didn't know advocating self-defense and self-reliance was a bad thing. And so from there, we went back and forth a little bit. And the thing about it is, one of the things a lot of people like to do with me is they don't do their research. As Charlemagne would say, do your Googles. And so what he didn't do was his research. He didn't know I'd been doing what I was already doing on my own for almost 6 years. And so I built a following. And so he thought the NRA found me on a corner somewhere, picked up, threw a hat on my head and said, talk boy. Nah, that's not what happened. So when he started going back and forth with me, he started noticing his audience were chiming in like, look, I mess with you, Russ, but I mess with him too. And he started realizing that, and that's when he kind of backed out of it. And so now the rest is history.
That's what it is. That's what it is. I'm real cool. I mean, I've interviewed Russell a few times, you know, at his house and so forth. You know, not recently. He's kind of going through his things right now, but it is what it is.
And look, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, a lot of people will send me like messages. Like, if you've been following me from like the beginning, you know about the Russell Simmons interaction. And you know, people are like, man, look what he's going through now. Kind of like, I'm like, I don't like seeing anybody going through that.
No, not at all.
Like, that doesn't do anything for me. And to be honest with you, I would have rather been able to sit down and have the conversation with Russ than I'm having it with you.
Yeah.
That's always been my intentions. I'm not a blind dogmatic ideologue. Like, that's not me. I think I'm very analytical, and I think about things from a very critical standpoint.
Yeah.
And that's, so I don't have a problem having tough conversations about different topics.
Well, Colion Noir, appreciate you coming in. I think this is offering a different perspective that you don't usually see. You know, especially on Vlad TV. You know, there's a lot of talk about illegal guns.
Yeah.
You know, but this is actually a talk about legal guns and the African American community in regards to that. And I think that's really going to open a lot of people's eyes.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me out, bro.
Peace.